All right, good afternoon, folks. We'll let folks come into the room. Welcome. We're glad you're here. And it's showing the meal costing slides now, correct, Ellen and Barrett? Great. All right. Thanks for all of you joining this afternoon. We're going to get started. It's 2:01. We know it's a busy time of year and folks have a lot of planning and other things going on with the snow coming in tomorrow. So the first order of business, welcome to this Mass Farm to School webinar. I want to thank Barrett Grazioso and Ellen Nyland for agreeing to do this presentation with us. Today, we really want to walk you through different considerations you can make with your meals and with your menu costs as you're designing your menus for next school year, strategically, considering how you might utilize local foods while also balancing out your commodity entitlements. And so we'll go through some real life practical examples, do some side-by-side comparisons of popular menu items from Barrett and Ellen's districts, and we'll provide links to different resources and allow time for questions and answers. For today's webinar, we are recording this. The slides will be available after today's call, and I will be dropping different links into the chat function, but please know any questions you have, please put them into the Q&A. I'll be monitoring that throughout today's presentation. So you can use that, very similar to the DESE town hall meetings. You can put your questions into the Q&A. We'll save the chat for our resource links, and we'll get going. Today's presenters, I'm happy to say, are outstanding chefs and directors in their own rights. Barrett Grazioso joins us from Belchertown Public Schools, and Ellen Nyland is currently the executive chef of Brookline Public Schools. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll let them talk a little bit more about their districts and their history. For those of you who are new to us, Massachusetts Farm to School, we're a statewide organization that works to strengthen local farms and fisheries and promote healthy communities by increasing local foods and through purchasing and in education in schools. So if you're not from, that's an easy one way to add more local to your menu, but we do work on professional learning opportunities, networking, policy and advocacy efforts to get more local food and education, food system education in schools, and certainly communications, like our new podcast that has launched this year. So Barrett, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Belchertown Public Schools and your meal program there?
Sure. So Belchertown Public Schools, we have approximately 2,000 students, as you see, 5 schools, pre-K through 12. We're a self-op. We do a mix of scratch and some, heat and serve. Just because of staffing issues. We do breakfast and lunch, and we serve approximately 1,300 lunches a day and about 900 breakfasts. One of the things that we started to use with our funds last year, because we are a rural farming community and I knew that we had local beef to purchase. So that's where we have utilized our extra funds. I do buy it raw, unprocessed in 10-pound packages for our managers to cook off at each school. And we did also get some stew meat last year, although we found that it was a little bit more difficult for all of our cook managers to work with. So we primarily just used that in our middle school and high school.
Thank you. And as you can also see, a lot of the image that's on the slide is also just a screenshot of the social media presence that Belchertown Public Schools Food Service has. And it was, kind of a week in reflection. So really great, great offerings. Ellen, do you mind introducing yourself? And I'm realizing you forgot to put in one of your beautiful photos. So forgive.
It's okay. Should I start talking anyways?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Um, so yes, I'm 6 months into my chef tenure at Brookline. I started out as a chef in school meals, and then kind of ironically, due to wanting more control over specifically local procurement, I went to being a director in a couple districts, and now I've gone back to being a chef, which I'm pretty happy about. Brookline, if you're not familiar with it, it seems like a city. It's technically a town, but it really seems like a small city outside of Boston. About 7,000 students across 10 schools, pre-K to 12. Our ADP is about close to 70% with the K-8s. And so you can do the math there, not 70% on breakfast, actually. And the high school, however, is hovering around 40%. So the high school is obviously our big challenge. They have lots of options. It's an open campus, et cetera, et cetera. So that's our big challenge, and that's where I'm based. We do breakfast, lunch, snack, and summer food service. We are self-operated. Similar to what Barrett said, we do a good amount of scratch cooking, but obviously we do heat and serve, based on equipment and food that's available to us. And I got a little pop-up that's right in front of my slide here.
I'm so
We
sorry, Ellen. Was
That's
that the
quite all
chat?
right. That's quite all right. We are working with Worcester Food Hub, and I've been working with Worcester Food Hub for all the way back to 2016, I believe, when I started in Webster. I think I was actually one of their first customers, and now they've really expanded, which is great. But obviously we work with our other mass buying group distributors as well. And it's always a challenge, but part of my job is to help train staff on processing raw, unprocessed product. And just today, actually, I had a woman julienning peppers, and a lot of them. And I had seen her struggling with that, I would say, earlier in the year. And today she did a really, really nice job. So that it just happened today, and it was really, really nice to see that progress. That just is, doing it over and over and over again. I mean, that's the only way you get better at that. So that was a nice little moment that happened today.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was
Huge.
yeah. She's still not cutting with a chef knife. She's still cutting with a little paring knife, which I don't think I'm ever going to be able to peel from her hands. But she did a beautiful job on the peppers today. So I was
Beautiful.
happy.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Um, in today's conversation, so we've asked Ellen and Barrett to talk a little bit more about how they like to strategically utilize local food. So, when folks are being asked to use local foods, like with the Northeast Food for Schools grant program that has just ended its first round, and we're looking forward to new funding becoming available for next school year. Mass Farm to School received a lot of questions about how should I spend my money? And because Massachusetts has diversified farm offerings and seafood offerings, that's a hard answer for us to say. There's no one-stop shop for you. There are different vendors that you can certainly work with that can provide a wide array of things, but it really depends on your menu and how you want to utilize local for your food service program and leverage those kinds of offerings. And so, Barrett, would you like to share a little bit more about your values-based procurement around why, more around your choice to do an IFB and work with Austin Ridge Acres specifically for beef for more of your local procurement, and tell us a little bit more beyond beef, like how you try to use local foods in your menus from a values perspective.
Sure. So year round, I will say we buy little leaf lettuce. That's an easy one. It's a fantastic product. Out of Massachusetts. The opportunity. I'll start with the beef. We have a couple of different um, farms here in Belchertown, actually. So I decided to do my own RFP. I sent it out to 3 different farms. that raise cattle, and one of them got back to me. Not only was the price the best, but also could provide with the amount that we needed. And so I really filled out most of the form myself. I gleaned the information from the farmer, but I made it easy for her to do, because they're busy. She's out doing hay, she's out taking care of the cattle. So I filled out that form as much as I can, and I actually got the form from the Mass Farm to School, which was fantastic, 'cause it's basically just all written out, super easy. Um,
And we'll be
and the,
sharing the link to that later in the presentation, the request for quotes.
And that was the first time I had ever filled one out. So I found it to be super user friendly, very easy. And like I said, I helped by taking care of most of the information. At the time, we sort of committed to a set amount of ground beef that we were going to use, and then the stew meat. What we found out is that ultimately we continue to move forward with just the ground beef, from the perspective of I am constantly short-staffed, and I don't always have the culinary expertise to cook the stew meat for 2 days, which is what we need to do to make it tender enough. So my farmer, um, basically at the time they were only doing 1-pound blocks of ground beef. So I asked her, what is the largest size you could do for us? So she special packs for us 10-pound frozen, and then 5 so like 50 pounds in a case in 10 pounds, which is great. I also, we are in maple country, so we buy local maple syrup when we do overnight oats. We have honey here in town as well, so I will buy honey. We have Mi Tierra, which grows their corn in Hadley, and then they are in Springfield processing for corn tortillas. So we do things like Mexican lasagna with the local beef. We do try and buy Cabot sour cream. That's an easy one. So we have orchards here in town, and we have orchards within the vicinity of the Pioneer Valley that we can buy fruit from. But I do buy directly from those farms as well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And Ellen, do you want to share a little bit of your values-based procurement? Like what goes into the thought process of selecting the products that meet your program goals?
Sure.
Understanding that you've worked at certainly in a couple of different systems, and we're always balancing cost and, like Barrett already said, staff capacity, be it attendance or skills, like you were just talking about with the julienne peppers. Where does values-based procurement work when you're making your purchasing decisions to leverage local?
So I would say, way back when I first started, I mean, we have some fantastic commodity items. I would say take DoD first, and then really good commodity items that we get from the government. I have always been, it's always been in the back of my head about where all this stuff is processed and how it's processed, and not just in terms of animal welfare, but especially in terms of labor, farm labor and food processors and all that kind of stuff. That's always been there for me, in school meals, because we are a big trading partner with USDA with this federal program. So that's something I can't really answer. And part of the appeal of local procurement to me is that those questions, it's much more transparent. So it's transparent, how far your food is traveling. It's more, animal welfare is more transparent. Labor practices are more transparent if you really want to dig. And I have dug into some of that stuff, even with students. So that's actually a driver. I'm sure Barrett would agree with that. That is a driver for me for local procurement, along with the quality of the items that we get. Just to kind of compare Barrett's list, I don't do as much direct farm purchasing. I think because of where we're located more in the urban area. But Little Leaf is, as Barrett said, a fantastic product. And I told a little anecdote before that I found that I didn't have to sell it. It sold itself once the managers realized how long it keeps crisp versus, bags of chopped romaine, I didn't have to sell it to the staff at all. It really sold itself, that product. We do Walden meat patties at the high school level. We do just our JTM burgers for K-8. Part of that is, of course, the kind of values based, but again, being in an urban environment here with an open campus, these high school kids can leave the building and go get a burger 3 blocks away. So I really have to offer, I'm not going to get them to purchase a JTM burger. It just, I have to offer something better than that on particular meals here in Brookline. Through
Well, and
the,
let me
yes.
interrupt there, Ellen. And can you also talk about kind of you're talking about the student preferences, certainly as far as competing with the public marketplace with your open campus, and how are utilizing local foods also helping you respond to, provide culturally responsive menus for your student populations?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So one, I'll just keep going through the list and circle back around to that. So we are also purchasing North Coast Seafood, Red's Best. We are purchasing dumplings from May, and we are purchasing the Meal Mantra Indian sauces. So those two things right there have really helped us with sort of cultural. We just did a Lunar New Year thing here in Brookline utilizing May dumplings. I will be the first one to say that we didn't, it may be lost on the students what the, May dumplings really were. I mean, that's just a time and education kind of thing that we could make that an even more meaningful experience with the students if we sort of explain the background of May and, how she went from a restaurant to a wholesale dumpling business, and and it's located in South Boston and all that kind of stuff. There's always opportunities, I think, to really connect with kids on local procurement, and that's the beauty of it. That's another one of the selling points for local procurement, is literally really connecting them. We did have Chef Andrew come in from North Coast, and students love that when they can talk to the creator of the product. We had the Crick sauce guy came in and did a demo. So that's another really nice thing about local procurement that we obviously just don't have with our USDA items.
Thank you. Yeah, you hit on a few things, especially as far as culturally responsive menus. I know Boston Public Schools also used May dumplings for their Lunar New Year celebration, and really great to see that business expanding in K-12 offerings.
Yeah.
Any of you who were at the Mass Farm to School conference last year, you may recognize that chef was one of our keynote speakers. And you
The
also,
other night, Abby, I'm sorry, the other nice just little thing I'd like to say about that is that I actually consulted with a staff member who is Chinese on that menu and on so I didn't go outside, I was actually able to utilize our staff, and in terms of culturally appropriate foods, we've been trying to do that as much as we can. We did for Haitian Independence Day, we did the Jumu soup. We have a lot of Haitian staff here. We did a Dominican soup. So we're trying to also tap into our staff for those kind of, cultural menus as best we can.
That's beautiful. And it reminds me we should do some more recipe farming from districts like yours that are doing those celebrations.
Yeah.
So Barrett and Ellen touched on certainly the vendor relationships, other areas that, especially if you want to use your local dollars to work with specific vendors because of the types of foods that they're offering, or to look at incorporating different programs like the Harvest in the Month program if you want a salad bar and haven't had one before, or if you want to look at utilizing local offerings, especially on your salad bar. Those can be nice marketing points to make sure that there's signage up that's really informing your student customers as far as the offerings that are coming from local places. Next, I'd love to pivot to the strategies around building the menu costs, understanding that there has to be a baseline. We're not, we're all in the business of feeding students, and it comes with the reimbursement rate of either 448 or 457, depending on what type of district you are. And so I guess Ellen and Barrett, can you talk to us about how you both are work to establish your baseline goal prices for how much you want your tray costs, your meal costs, your food costs to add up to, while also factoring in your labor and overhead.
Sure. Do you want to start, Ellen? Do you want...
No, go ahead,
Okay.
Barrett.
Typically what I try and keep in mind when I'm thinking about the week is, what are my delivery days? What days can I count on having some scratch cooking that's going to take some extra time? And what can I add to that that will make their life easier? So for example, having the little leaf doesn't need to be washed, doesn't need to be dried, goes right out. So those are ways to look at managing and balancing those menu items. For us, taco day is really, really popular. I can use my commodity beans. I can also use my commodity tomatoes, my commodity cheese, and then I have local beef. Spaghetti is another one. We do spaghetti with meat sauce instead of meatballs, so that I don't have to have my staff making handmade meatballs with the ground beef. But I do send pounds diverted to Made Right. So I will use the government beef in that way.
Thank you. And Ellen, do you want to chime in as far as your menu costs when you're looking at there's sky's the limit as far as what you want to serve students and the fiscal limitations of the federal reimbursement rate?
Well, I think like we've been kind of discussing that, we're at this point that we all hoped to be at with the reimbursement rates as high as they are. I think that most programs are really, not that cost is not a factor, we're all so trained that it is. I think we're all still thinking like $1.50 is our food cost, which is not really accurate anymore, but we're all kind of trained that way. But we are at a point now, which is really, really nice, but a lot of hard work by a lot of people, where it's the dollars is not quite so critical because the reimbursement rates are so high. So we're at this place where we can do a little experimenting and saying, okay, so I know that my Walden burger is $3 a burger, so that I'm probably I might hit the 448 or whatever it is, 450 food cost there. But I know that my Monday meal was 91 cents, and so kind of balancing across the board like that. And then if I have a high dollar item, like let's go back to the Walden patty, which I think the cost is $3. So I may, if I have, as Barrett said, if I have commodity wedges, potato wedges, then that's what I'm going to serve with that, because that's going to really balance out that kind of high value item right there. Or I'm not going to serve a commercial potato product, let's put it that way. Or I'm going to do a scratch cooked roasted red, taking into account all those things that Barrett just listed about. I really like that you mentioned, making it easier on the staff. So I'm really looking at the menu. Where are the easier days where we can build in some prep the day before, or we'll have the time in the morning to cut potatoes. So it's a lot of like kind of, I guess, high level perspective, looking at the menu and just basically building in the labor time more so than the cost for processing unprocessed items.
Thank you. And in some cases, it's also knowing that there are some minimally processed foods like diced potato, it might not be those red potatoes that you're looking for, but diced potato, you can get cut diced potatoes locally that can be used for hash browns and the like.
Right.
Yeah. So as we all know, there are food costs to everything that's on a tray. This is a terrific tray from last year from Littleton, and the entitlement products that you'd like to use in menus are a great baseline. but it's also nice to know the cost of purchased items so that you can do that balancing act around, oh, is it actually going to be that much more expensive if it's going to be a higher quality product, either that students will really know the difference on in the example of the local beef that you're both offering, or the local marketing that comes with students seeing name recognition or regional recognition. We are hearing more and more from students and climate activists that are also students who want to be thinking about climate forward menus. And one of the strategies that food service departments can provide is being an ally where you're able to really promote the closer to home menu offerings that you're providing, because that, you know, that hydroponically grown lettuce was from Massachusetts and not getting cut and trucked all the way over from California. You should definitely, you know, see what the prices are on your entitlements. They're not always the best price. We have a slide about DoD not always being the best price. Shop your existing vendors. Tell your existing vendors what you're looking for that's local, especially if you know a product is being carried by a similar vendor for another district, understanding that you all have to go through your solicitation processes. And if there are gaps on local foods that you would like to do an additional solicitation for, we do have resources that you can use yourself, or Mass Farm to School is happy to support additional, you know, support developing an IFB, doing a 3-quote process. We will have another round of the Northeast Produce RFP with MAPC later this spring. So those are off, you know, things to help you meet to be able to procure local foods through the proper channels. Other costs that you should consider and leave room for, especially when you're thinking about, yeah, you know, your USDA foods are free, but they also come with delivery, you know, not DoD, but other things come with delivery fees. And those are things to take into account. There can be spoilage or damage on delivery, so monitor that, especially to ensure there's acceptable product on receipt. You can get credit with your vendor, or it can be the justification to switch vendors, especially if they're not living up to their contract. And Barrett and Ellen have really hit on labor. The scratch cooking requires more time and labor. So even if some food costs may appear cheaper, even if they're local, that might not be the best choice for your menu if you're having a really complex plan for the day. And yes, there's a lot of funding that has been circulating, but please also plan for your facilities maintenance and your equipment upgrades. And hopefully we'll have more information about upcoming equipment grants through the Department of Agriculture, that the Food Insecurity Infrastructure Grant. They are looking for more school applicants for that type of infrastructure grant program. Ellen or Barrett, anything else you would want to add on this slide?
I just wanted to chime in because you were talking about equipment, Abby, that some of the most useful equipment that I have found for in terms of, you know, processing raw stuff is pretty low tech. I mean, like the Sunkist sectionizer is the best example. I mean, we're not talking, sure, maybe if you're BPS or if you're Central Kitchen out in Springfield or that kind of thing, then you need something more high volume and maybe automated. But even for a district the size of Brookline, 7,000 students, having a sectionizer in every school, which is a very low-tech piece of equipment, goes a long way towards processing unprocessed items.
Thank you.
And I did get a RoboCoo for each kitchen as well. That is an incredibly helpful tool. You know, like for example, if you didn't trust anyone to slice the peppers, boom,
Right.
feed them through, they're done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The other one, just to you know, emphasize Barrett's point, the other low tech really piece of equipment are mandolins. And again, exactly, if I have a recipe that's supposed to be julienne onions, but I know that I don't have the knife skills, well, I'm gonna have them use the mandolin and slice them, because then I get a uniform cut, so I use those, especially those low-tech pieces of equipment. Because we just never, knife skills only improve if you use them over and over and over and over again. So sometimes the better call is what piece of equipment is going to help me produce, the most uniform cut. And never mind speed, but sometimes uniform cut is even more important than that.
For
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you. So we wanted to talk about, we can talk about these high level items, but if we're looking at the food costs of a very popular menu item like a burger, how does that compare? And so Brookline with purchasing the local Walden burger, their food costs could run, depending on how they're using their entitlements, between 345 to Ellen's point earlier, up to 520, depending on how they're planning to, if they would use some brown box items or DoD items on that tray to offset the cost of the Walden burger. Whereas, as Barrett had said earlier, the food cost for her burger is a little bit lower because it is a diverted product, but she's able to layer in other local offerings on the tray. So do you want to, this is Barrett's photo of a burger in Belchertown. And do you want to talk about the types of products, or do you want me to switch over to the spreadsheet?
Well, I defer to Made Right for our burgers and our meatballs because they're soy-free and wheat-free. And we find that the students really like the consistency. They're juicy. They're made pretty clean. So that is the diverted product. I'm going to do that again this next year. Those are obviously commodity crinkle cut fries. Those are DoD watermelon, mandarin, and I buy pickles. But the lettuce, tomato, and onion are all DoD. So that's what helps keep the cost down on this particular plate.
Yep.
Great. I'm going to stop share on the screen really quickly, and we'll pull up a spreadsheet that kind of illustrates, we did a breakdown of cost for the burger day between those two districts, what the prices would be. So let me pull that up just a moment. And just as a reminder, this is being recorded and we do have the Q&A function open. So if you have questions, please pop them into the Q&A and we will continue to add different resource links into the chat. So we're starting with the burger. Here we go. Awesome. Can you see this? Great. Is the view okay? Is it large enough for folks? Great. All right. So if we're going line by line, Barrett already illustrated the ground beef patty. If that's a diverted product, it's going to be a lower cost, but that does allow for other areas to leverage either the DoD produce, if you're going to use a produce product, or if you have NFS funds or want to buy local because you have additional funds in your revolving account, other products may still be well within your budget for that menu amount. Even looking at sliced cheese, we know some districts have been getting a good amount of USDA cheese while also cutting in local cheese as well. Barrett talked about Cabot products. And then for Brookline, for the cost of the local burger, yes, if Ellen's going to do only local products, which would be in this column here, that would be a pretty high cost menu plate. But if she's getting a lot of the lettuce and tomatoes and fruit through DoD sources, it really helps bring the cost of the total plate down.
Yeah.
And forgive me, I was looking at the wrong section. Because the total food costs for a plate that's leveraging the DoD product, could be as low as 345, which would still give you over $1 of remaining funds after that meal. Is there more you want to say here, Ellen?
No, I think you hit it right. It's like, it's sort of two approaches to the same problem. So in Barrett's case, which is typically like what we would do with our K-8s, is we would use, in our case, it's a JTM patty, and I might, especially for 6 to 8, zhuzh it up with some local lettuce, tomato, and red onion, let's say. Or on the flip side, if we're spending all that money on the high school to keep the kids in-house for the Waldenburger, then I'm definitely going to utilize DOD, all the way down the line for everything else to balance out the cost.
Awesome. Thank you. And Barrett, was there more you wanted to share on your pricing? You're a shopping hawk looking at your prices.
Yeah, no. No, that looks good.
Awesome. And then another way to look at it, understanding that these two have done certainly local meat procurement, has also been looking at how tacos are done. So tacos two ways. So again, in Belchertown, utilizing the local taco meat, the meal cost could range between $2.08 to $4.06 for a robust local taco meal. Whereas in Brookline, leveraging the commodity meat, the meal cost might be as low as 122 to 190. Well, like this is a when some parents might be like, what, tacos or nachos? And then you show them all of the additional fruits and vegetables that are in addition to the tortilla chips and the meat or meat alternate that you're providing, it can be a really robust meal.
And I will say this, we did try and do the taco shells, but they're not easy to work with. So most of our students now know that when we say tacos, it's basically like a taco salad or nachos. So we found that this is an easier way to serve our tacos. And occasionally we'll offset it with rice and do like a burrito bowl, if you will. But it is funny. When I first came to Belchertown, this is what I saw for tacos. I said, all right, we'll go with it.
And I'll stop sharing. We'll go back to kind of the spreadsheet and looking at the costs of the taco pricing, leveraging USDA or commodity beans versus versus using the local protein. So over here, again, Belchertown, if they're going to use the Austin Ridge ground beef, it can really be offset depending on if you're going to use black beans and a bunch of your DOD. That can really help bring the price down. I will say we do have local dry black beans that are available that some districts are using. And again, that's kind of a staff timing comparison. If you really feel like your staff are going to be able to have enough time to be them. But that has gone over well in several districts. And Barrett pointed to the tortilla chips instead of using a taco shell. Like that's a labor savings in some ways, especially when you're thinking of the service line and how quickly you have to move students through.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, to have a total food cost or a total meal cost of of around just over $2 is a really compelling plate. And then going over to Brookline, this is Taco Day is a popular day. So
Yes, it is.
how,
Yes, it is.
how many tacos are you normally serving? You're serving 3 tacos for your high school
We
when
are.
you're tacos. So can you walk us through, yes, you're using a diverted ground beef and uh different DOD or local products when available.
Right. This would be, I would have to say, like, the way I think about this is that JTM beef taco is so inexpensive. So that for me like, okay, great, because I feel like now I have some leeway with what else I want to do with the plate. Like, for instance, I know at the high school level that I want to try the mi tierra tortillas, you know, and also that's also, you know, a cultural meal thing to think about, depending on how many Spanish students you have. And we have enough that I don't really want to serve the tortilla chips, even though kids seem to like them. But I have to say, like back to my earlier point, anytime I see that ground beef, that beef taco meat at 27 cents a serving, I have to think too, what are the hidden costs there of that? You know, how in the world is that produced for that little amount of money? So it's, I guess it's like it's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. You know, um it helps me maybe indulge with some higher dollar items on the tray, like maybe if I wanted to do the local, like mi tierra tortillas, um, and some of the produce, but I'm always also thinking in the back of my head about the hidden cost of that kind of thing. I can't help myself.
Yeah, thank you. And we're going to pivot back over to the presentation slides so folks don't have death by spreadsheets, because your entitlement uh, dollars aren't due until I think March 14th this year. But when you're thinking about leveraging local, there are different strategies for sure. Being a savvy shopper and being able to compare your prices between your distributors is one avenue. Other avenues are to really manage your menus and streamline the products that you'll use on multiple days. Barrett has talked about really making sure you're getting the most bang for your buck out of not making your staff go back to the well twice. You know, if they're going to make local beef chili for this awesome, this awesome menu day on a Tuesday, why not utilize that chili as part of your baked potato bar later, a couple days later? And that, as we also know, really helps the chili season and it's more flavorful a couple days later. When you have complicated recipes, it helps to balance some of those with the heat and serve options, like you were talking about with which types of fries or potato product you might use, depending on the message, depending on the menu, and then buying high value but low labor needs, like the hydroponic lettuce that you've all talked about. Do you want to talk about a little bit of your strategies for utilizing your DoD, understanding that in Massachusetts we have some months when we have fresh produce readily, like amply available?
So what I like to do, DoD has been amazing. I'm very happy with the company we're using now. I've had very little product to complain about. Obviously, throughout the course of the year, there's going to be spikes. Some things are going to go high. All of a sudden, cases of lettuce are going to be $60. Cases of tomato, they're going to be $60. What I have found when that happens, and it's not the end of the year when I need to burn up money, I will go with who I have my bid with. And I often buy, like when tomatoes were $65 a case, I go buy Roman number twos. I go 6x6 number twos, and they're going to be $30. So I might not use my DoD funds for that and use it over there. Same thing with lettuce. Green leaf might be, there's a couple of times when they're switching over from California to Arizona growing areas, and it's outrageously expensive. So I might, at that point, I don't typically buy pre-cut lettuce because I don't like it as much. I don't think it tastes as well, but that's times when I will utilize the pre-cut because the price stays the same year round for those.
Thank you. And Ellen, DoD items you really love to use?
Yeah, I would just like to say, off the top, when I was a director, I mean, my approach to entitlement was take all the DoD, take everything you can. And then the amazing thing is you use it all and you get 2 or 3 other allotments from districts that don't use it all. I think Barrett and I were joking about towards the end, it's like strawberries all around. Do strawberries for everyone. You got to use the money. So that's number one procurement strategy for me was always take 100% of the DoD. And then I just, you know, sort of, as Barrett mentioned, price shop with our other vendor and see if there's any significant differences. But honestly, a lot of it also has to do with delivery day. If my produce vendor is Tuesday and my DOD is Thursday, then I'm looking at the menu. And sometimes it just has to be, well, I need that, you know, I need that case of tomatoes for before I get DOD. So that's gonna go on my produce vendor and not on my DOD. But
And
you know,
that's a great point as well. Some folks, depending on the farm that you might be working with, or just the food hub that you might be working with to get local product, think about if you come to find out that they are not able to deliver to every single school in your district, think about how you reallocate your DoD produce, because that's on a limited drop anyway,
right,
and utilize your local deliveries to offset the
right,
drops you're getting with GOD.
right, right.
Other strategies that you like to use for brown box or for diverted. We know that these are programs that are depends on the product as far as how you want to use them. We do have, local black beans and lentils that could be sourced instead of only going through canned vegetables. I also just learned that there may be local black bean burgers that are on the commodity. Oh, yes. Okay. That was a hot take I just got this afternoon. Glad that it's accurate. And it's nice when you can get a brown box or a diverted item that's also local. You should still publicize that. If it's Maine grown blueberries that you're still getting through brown box, absolutely advertise that. And then
Right,
allow yourself to focus on, when you're looking at diverted, what are the things you really need to save on labor.
right,
But don't forget about your whole piece chicken, your legs, thighs, etc., when you're also weighing with your burgers and meatballs and pizza.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I've
I, I just, I know Barrett and I were sort of comparing our, top 10, which our items were similar, commodity items were similar. When I was a director, I stayed away from diverted just because it was too much work. It's a lot of work balancing all that. So I really took as much commodity as I could and diverted very, very little, partially just because I found it just created more paperwork, basically. I know people have opinions about pizza. I know for me, I have always just sort of stuck with that's the one thing I would divert cheese for pizza, and then we make our own toppings, basically. We are not making pizza from scratch, and I don't have any plans to do that. I know districts that do it, and I admire them for that. I think for me, it just always made sense for that to be the one diverted item that I would choose. And then, the list is infinite of what you can do for toppings, including how you can utilize local
Mhm.
vegetables, if not protein, for that diverted item.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, if I last year was the first year I really delved into diverted, and I will say I partner with my bid is with someone who keeps track of it very closely. So it is, I think it's imperative that whoever your main bid is, your grocery bid, how they track it helps. It comes up like on my order screen, and I found it to be incredibly helpful. So I diverted chicken, I diverted cheese for pizza, and for I did like Land O'Lakes so I can get string cheese, and I will probably divert more for next year than I think I will take from Brown Box. Also because Brown Box, when it arrives, you just have so much and you have to take it
Yeah.
all, and we just sometimes can't. We can't juggle all of that in our freezers. As is, most of us are feeding more students than our kitchens were ever made. The capacity wasn't made for this many meals. So we have major storage issues. And diverted allows you to sort of take it when you want it rather than all at once.
Right.
Thank you. So we are getting close on time, and so we also want to talk about strategies to find a local farm partner. On the Mass Farm to School website, we do have this food source map for you to be able to find local vendors that are really want to partner with schools. And now yes, it's February, but now is the time to plan with growers as they are completing their crop plans and doing their seed orders, or they're breeding, they're establishing their breeding plans for livestock for the coming year or two. Uh, talking with some districts that worked with farmers directly who needed enough lead time to raise the poultry to then have on a spring menu. Those conversations happened months before. When you do talk to a local farmer or a distributor, be specific in what you want, especially if it's the farmer, the pack size and the volume that you're looking for. If you're looking for a lightly processed product like cut potatoes, squash fries, cut sweet potatoes, zoodles, etc. Different farm partners in the region have that capability, and being clear about what you're looking for can help them plan or connect you with another farmer that can grow for you. You'll also want to be specific about when you want it. It's not going to if you don't have a robust summer meal program, having a couple pallets of watermelons is not going to be as much use as it would be in September. So thinking about the months of your menus, the delivery parameters as far as what schools you need delivered to, timing, how you move your DoD around, etc. And now can be a good time to begin your procurement process, depending on what you're looking for. Because of time, I'm going to slip through our previous year's terrific trays that highlighted diversion and locally sourced items, but know that these are in the slide decks that you can reference later. I already mentioned DoD is not always the best price, so please do your shopping. But just in review, strategies that can help you balance your menu really you need to think about it. There's no one-stop shop. So it's factor your labor costs when you're assessing your scratch-made or your ready-made products. Don't just compare ingredient prices, compare the whole meal cost. When they're talking about local tacos or local burgers, what is shifting, because it's not going to be a completely local plate unless it's perhaps one of your harvest celebration days. Or a feast day that's in partnership with members in your community. You can balance your meal costs throughout the week. And that is something that is really necessary if you're trying to have some of those aha, wow menu days. And pairing items with the DoD or USDA foods on the tray can really help you provide consistent types of menu items, costs, and quality. And consider utilizing Harvest of the Month that can really help you plan for your local highlights. We not only have the 12 months of the year, there's a total of 20 Harvest of the Month. So if cranberry, if butternut squash is not for you, switch it out for something else that you think would work. And highlight your local offerings, by telling your students and staff that things are local, it can really help demystify what's on the tray. When and on the marketing and communications front, Bear, do you want to share how you manage your Belchertown school meals social media?
We have a Facebook page that also is intertwined with Instagram, and we do a post once a week. We collect photos from all 5 of our schools, and I actually was able to get a grant-funded social media stipend for one of my staff members. So it's nice to have their perspective, and so we basically post sort of like a weekend review.
That's awesome. And that's a much lower lift than a daily post or and over time it's really built the expectation, it feels like, of the community
Yes.
well.
And I will say it's our track record. So when we have a high school student that's disgruntled and posts a photo of a meal they're not happy with, we say, well, okay, you may have only taken this, but this is what we offer. So it's kind of a nice safety net for our own use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other tips that we want to make sure, like, as you dive into it a little bit more, think about the reimbursement rate and how you want to carve up your costs on your tray. Local offerings are available year round. Some are fresh, others are frozen. But it's not that nothing is locally available in February. There are plenty of things that are locally available, including produce. And really know that you have a role in our local food system. Schools are institutional buyers, and your volume can be a lot for one farm, but it can be a really good sales bump for other partners. A lot of you are using different food hubs that can really accommodate the delivery schedules that you need. So if you are looking to work with a food hub next year, we will be reissuing the RFP with MAPC to provide the Northeast Produce bid that you don't need to do any further solicitation for. You just need to issue a contract with an awarded vendor like the Worcester Food Hub or the Boston Food Hub, or et cetera, that might be in your area. We do have the local food map that I will drop into the chat. We have our Harvest of the Month program, and really work your network. Tell your distributors what you're looking for. Like Ellen and Barrett said, ask for demonstrations and product samples. Even our local vendors really want to get into schools and advertise their product with your students, and utilize those as marketing and engagement opportunities, not just with your students, but also your staff. JSI and Project Bread culinary offerings are incredible opportunities to work on knife skills, et cetera, for your teams, but also really help them with recognition and really feeling like their school kitchens have a lot to offer the school community. This is the request for quotes template that Barrett had mentioned. We worked on this in conjunction with DESI's financial management team, and anything that needs to be customized or really looked at and edited is highlighted in yellow. So we've tried to make it really easy for you to customize it specifically for what you're looking for. It says produce here, but Barrett was able to use this for a beef quote. So just know that you can use this to spend up to $100,000 with any specific vendor if you want to do a 3-quote solicitation. And I'll go through that. And we are at 2:58, and I want to open it up for questions for those of you who are with us. If you want to put any questions into the Q&A, I will work on dropping some of the resource links into the chat. Was I sharing my screen or was I not sharing my screen? You didn't tell
Nope.
me. I was just flipping through.
Sorry.
That's
Sorry.
okay. Oh,
I wasn't sure what we
oh,
were seeing.
no.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I wasn't sure.
Don't worry about it. I will drop links into the chat for folks. What a patient group of panelists you are. So we do have our new podcast coming out. So if you're interested in being listed or being interviewed for our podcast, a new episode drops once a month. We currently have stories that are built out through September of this current year. But if you are interested in being interviewed and feel like you have a story to tell that you'd like for our Northeast Farm to School podcast to highlight, check that out. We do have our Northeast Produce RFP that again will be reissued. If you are interested in working with an area food hub, happy to talk to you and get you set up with them and execute a contract if you need to do that. They can be a really great opportunity, to work with because they're aggregating from so many different farms, and they can handle more complex delivery schedules than one individual farmer usually. And then I already dropped our link to the Harvest of the Month program in the chat. So yeah. All right. Well, it's 3 o'clock. So if folks have questions, pop them in the Q&A. Otherwise, Barrett and I and Ellen and I will hang on for another minute or two, but we really appreciate you joining our presentation today, and reach out to Mass Farm to School if you have questions and want to talk about procurement for your district. Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks, Ellen and Barrett. I'll
Thanks,
stop.
Abby.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.